concrete walls. There's a place for us where we could go, where we could be alone. Between city lights, we don't have to hide. I wanna go, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? I can't understand why we can't hold hands, but they don't know what we have is real love. Aren't you sick and tired of having to hide? I know a place, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow?
What's up, you guys? Welcome to Livestream. It is Monday night, and it's time to do some Q&A. But before we do the Q&A, I'm showing you guys this footage. I always like to start out with a little bit of flight footage, don't I? This is the Beta FPV HX1. Oh, there it goes. Yep, that was a perfect time for the flight to end. I always like to start off with a little bit of flight footage when I can. That's the Beta FPV HX115, and I'm working on the review of that for my channel. It's in the middle of editing right now. I would like to release it tomorrow, but I may not make it. It's a very interesting little quad. Very interesting. I thought it was flying pretty good. Of course, that's like the best flight after I figured out all of the little quirks and foibles it had, and then I was like, okay, let's see if we can get a great flight. No, that wasn't low battery, Richard. I just misjudged and crashed. One thing about these 1S toothpicks is they sure as hell do not just like bounce up out of the grass. They have no torque to the motors to deal with anything that interrupts the spinning of the props. But yeah, welcome to Livestream, you guys. Yeah, I was pretty impressed with it. Beta FPV, good job. Hello, Michael Blade FPV. Nice to see you all here. We've got Kevin Plaisure is in the chat, Mr. Emu Flight developer. Hey, Kevin Plaisure. Kevin Plaisure. I watched Mark Spatz's video rounding up the new features of Betaflight 4.3, and he pointed out that Betaflight has adopted, what was it? So it was a linear mixer. It was a linear mixer from EUFlight, which means, correct me if I'm wrong, but Betaflight accepted a pull request from you. That's something. That's really great. That's fantastic, man. I don't know if that's the first time Betaflight has taken an EmuFlight pull request, but it's the first one that I heard about for sure, and I'm pretty impressed. I'm pretty happy for you, man. I just feel like, how to put this? There have been some other projects out there. Butterflight, Flight 1, which had some friction with the Betaflight devs, and the Betaflight devs were like, no, we're not going to accept any pull requests from you. And when Emu came along and was sort of derived from, I think Emu was derived from Butterflight, if my memory's right. He says, I didn't make the pull request, but it is EmuFlight code. Hey, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool. Not that EmuFlight needed sort of the needed Betaflight to lend it legitimacy, but it does say something about the projects, that there's that cross-pollination going on. And I think we all rather live in a world where there's a nice cross-pollination between projects instead of people who are just being mean to each other. Yeah. Oh, see, now it's comments like that are going to get you kicked back into the we don't like you anymore. It's sort of sad, he says, as we improved the mixer more than the implementation they have in Betaflight. Run Puppy FPV. Run Puppy FPV. The first time you plugged a video in the chat, I let it through because I was like, cool, yeah, this guy's making videos. The second time you do it, now you're just spamming. So let it go, Run Puppy. Let it go. Oh, what's my opinion on the HDO3 versus the Attitude V6, says Vibing Popcorn? That's an interesting question. I got to remind myself. Wait, the HDO3? Do you mean the HD3? There is no HDO3. Did you mean the HDO2? Anyway. I see. Quick Flash, you're saying there's more. I see what you're saying, Quick Flash. It's sad because the linear mixer that I thought you were saying Betaflight's mixer was sad. See, I misread that. So thank you for the clarification. You're saying that the Betaflight implementation of linear mixer, which they pulled from EmuFlight, you actually went further and made it even better, and they didn't actually get the full pull request. Because Betaflight 4.3 we've been waiting long damn enough for Betaflight 4.3. Could you not, submit another pull request that's going to make it last longer? Can we just all stop improving Betaflight and get a dang release out? Betaflight 4.3, where are you? Vibing Popcorn meant the HD3. All right, let's take a look at Vibing Popcorn's question about the Dominator HD3. I got to remind myself of the specs for this damn thing. Cannot find product. Nobody has it. Can we find the dang specs for this thing somewhere? Okay, it's out of stock, but 800 by 600 LED display versus the OLED display in the Attitude V6. Now, the Attitude V6 has Attitude V6 has a 39-degree field of view with a... Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm thinking of... My bad. Wait. Attitude V6. It's the LCOS. My bad. See, I'm glad I checked the specs because I was remembering the wrong goggle. 39-degree field of view, 1280 by 960 LCOS. That's tough. So the 800 by 600 resolution is fine for analog. It's fine for analog. 1280 by 960. Obviously, more resolution is better. Wait, that's the 800 by 480. That's HDMI mode. So if you are trying to run SharkBite, the answer will be different. Okay? So let's assume that you're trying to run analog. If you're trying to run SharkBite, then the Attitude V6 is the winner. because the 1280 by 960 resolution, you're going to have an advantage there. 39-degree field of view is acceptable, and the LCOS display is acceptable. Between those two, I would take the Attitude V6 for Shark Bite. But if you're talking about analog, I would be tempted by this one. It's got a bigger field of view. It's probably going to be cheaper, although I'm not sure. The LCOS versus LCD display, that's a tough one. I'd have to look at them side by side to be sure. I think you're probably going to get the HD3 at a better price, and with the savings you make on the HD3, you could buy like a nice module. I hope that's helpful. Phantom FPV, good to see you here. Good to see you here, Phantom. Always nice when you turn up. License to Drive says, are you aware of the live stream starting in 52 minutes? Drew Camden and Lexi Jansen with the FAA to talk about freestyle. No. Nope. I was completely unaware of that. Where's that? Who's showing that? Richard asks, do you get Betaflight 4.3 early, or are you going to get it with the rest of us? The thing is, you can download a nightly build of Betaflight 4.3 right now. Anyone can. I'm not special. So you could download but it's the nightly build. So it's a nightly build. So you're taking a risk that there might be a bug in it. Mark Spatz, UAV Tech. Here, open link in new window. What is this? That is 507RC. That is a Creator Studio link. I can't open it. That link doesn't seem right. Hang on, maybe I can copy paste it. I can't seem to make that link work. 507RC. UAV Tech just did a video. He just did a post on his Patreon where he has a nightly build of Betaflight that he personally has like vetted to not have any bugs. And so if you want to try Betaflight 4.3 early, like the main reason I'm tempted by Betaflight 4.3 is that it has full support for Ghost Protocol, including telemetry. By the way, EmuFlight also has support for a Ghost Protocol with telemetry. So, but if you feel stuck with Betaflight for some reason, then 4.3 you really want it. But you don't want to take a risk on a nightly build. Sway on FPV asks, what's a nightly build? A nightly build means that it is the work in progress that the devs are working on. It is the code that the devs are currently working on and testing. And every night it's automatically compiled. And so if you download a nightly build of Betaflight 4.3, there could be a bug in it that they were working on something and it's got a bug and something bad could happen. So I've got this link now. Thank you, Ghost Branch, in the Discord. National Drone Safety Awareness Week. Droning on after dark. Well, don't they know I stream on Monday nights? Like, whatever. Sounds interesting. I mean, I'm obviously gonna be streaming until 10, but sounds interesting. If you're interested in trying Betaflight 4.3, but you want to feel a little bit safer about running a nightly build, UAV Tech has created a... Hang on a second, let me just double check this link. Hang on a second. He has created... Yeah, a setup guide. Hang on. Sorry, guys. He has created a setup guide that I'm one of his patrons, so I can see it. That goes over setting up Betaflight 4.3, and he has also got a link. I'm not sure where it is, but he's got a link to a version of Betaflight that he's vetted as safe. So let me just throw his Patreon in the chat, right? Plugging my own. I normally plug in my own Patreon. Here I am plugging his. Hey, speaking of which, here's my main screen. This is what we go. What are we doing here? You new here? Say hi if you're new here. If it's your first live stream. I'll be monitoring your chats here in the YouTube chat and doing my best to answer his questions. Bobby Bags, I do believe that was patron-only content that he made. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's one of the nightly builds. It's just that he vetted it. That's the thing. So I'll be answering your questions here in the chat. If you want to make sure I get your question, hit the $ right down here. Leave a super chat. Got any super chats yet? We got a couple super chats. See, they get pulled out in this window. Just hit the $. Or if you want to be an extra special sausage over here, these beautiful people are my patrons. And they get to hang out in my Discord server and chat with me and chat with each other. Of course, I answer everybody's messages as best I can, but some people like to be in the Discord. Joining my Patreon is a great way to do that. Yeah. Won't it take ages to test all the functions of whatever Betaflight 4.3 is currently available to make sure it's not going to fail at some critical point? License to drive, usually that's what's happening now, okay? So by the time Betaflight gets from nightly builds, which is not even beta, it's kind of alpha. Maybe it's beta. I don't know where the line is. But the nightly builds are developer only. They're not intended for public consumption. Now, they are distributed to the public. You can download them. And if you care to take the chance, then fine. But there's a possibility that there's a serious bug in a nightly build. There usually isn't. But it's a possibility, and so you're taking your chances by running a nightly build. The most common way that bugs in nightly builds show up is that you'll maybe get like some weird flight performance. Maybe you'll get desyncs. Theoretically, you could get fail-safes under weird conditions. These are all things that can happen. When they were first working on bidirectional D-Shot, that's an ESC-related thing, and there was, in fact, a bug where the minute you plug in your battery, the ESC would just go to full throttle, which is kind of a big deal. I think that was a BL Heli bug, not a Betaflight bug. But my point is, downloading nightly builds is not for the faint of heart. It's usually safe, but when it's not safe, bad things happen. So by the time they get to the release candidates, they're basically done bug testing it. And the purpose of the release candidates is to get the code into a lot more people's hands and try to find those edge cases. But usually release candidates don't turn up any deal breaker edge cases. And when they do, like this one flight controller has a bug in its target, they're usually fixed pretty quickly. So by the time they get to release candidate, it probably will be, say, 2 to 4 weeks is how long it usually takes before they finally release. The fact that it's taking them so long to get to release candidate, fingers crossed it won't mean that the RC phase is also super long. Don't know. Why do they build only at night? Well, it's just you could download the GitHub repo and compile the code anytime you want. But there is a service that builds the code once a day for anyone to download, so you don't have to compile it yourself. Because not everybody wants to do that or can do that. And it's just the nightly builds. That's what they say. Omer Nair, thank you for $2 He says, thanks so much for your GPS videos. Darshan Srikumar, thank you for $5 New Zealand. Do you have a favorite 6-inch prop? I'm so far disappointed with everything I've tried except the K2 Ethics biblades. I don't have a favorite 6-inch prop. I don't fly 6-inch really at all. I do know from talking to people who fly 6 inches that you are not alone, that a lot of the 6-inch props out there are kind of crappy and not very good. Big Data Pimp agrees with you that the Ethics K2 are the best 6-inch props. I would love to take any comments from the chat about good 6-inch props, but yikes, I don't know any off the top of my head because I don't fly a lot of 6-inch. It's just me. Thank you so much for Hobby Grade for a $5 super chat. Tap that like button, y'all. Josh is working. Thank you so much. Yeah, hit that like button for sure. Give me them sweet likes. Okay. Bobby Bags says release candidates are pretty much safe. Yeah, I agree about release candidates, Bobby Bags. By the time they put it out to release candidate, there's a very low chance of there being a major bug. Usually, if you look at the release candidate, because each release candidate will have release notes, and if you look at previous releases of Betaflight, there are things they find in the RC phase are usually extremely minor and affect small numbers of people, but they could be there. But the nightly builds are less established. Demenis says, if you're reporting the bugs, you might be helping with the development, but most of the time when you submit a nightly, you think it works. Exactly. You think it works. But if programmers were always right about whether their code was buggy, then we would never have bugs. So. Brickfrog in the Discord has a comment about this. This is the Pyrodrone Special Edition Radiomaster TX16S Max. My understanding is that what happens is a store like, because 533 has done something simple, they'll contract with Radiomaster to make them a special edition. The radio is still a TX16S Max inside. So what do we got here? Ooh, squeaky gimbal. Squeak, 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 squeak. That's not good. Yikes. Disappointing. What else we got? Got some squeaking. Clicking.
Down on the stick, no noise.
Huh.
Up on the stick, squeak.
Yeah, we don't like that.
I think there's contact over here.
Yeah, so what are you going to do about that? I would go back to Pyrodrone, only because I'm sure that Pyrodrone is going to take good care of you. They'll be very quick to say, whoops, sorry, that's not good, and they'll send you another one, is what I would expect to happen. If this were a less reputable store, you might be screwed, and you might have to go back and beg Radiomaster to take care of you. But Pyrodrone is pretty solid, so I would say contact Pyrodrone with that. Chances are you just got unlucky and you got a bad one. Kevin Summer, going back to the topic of nightly builds, Kevin Summer says, nightlies are kind of orthogonal to alpha beta release candidate. We're talking about me calling nightlies alphas or betas. Nightly is whatever the latest code we've got today, so it's a total mixed bag. Alpha releases are generally this kind of works, but not all features are implemented, and betas are feature complete, but not yet bug free. Release candidates are, we think these are ready to release and might be bug free, but you try it out and see if you find any bugs. Yeah, I like that, Kevin. That sounds right to me. Larry N7LUF is waiting to do his first build, the Xylo 5-inch Freestyle. I hope that goes well for you, Larry. Hope it goes well for you. Brickfrog, it may just need a little bit of lubrication. It shouldn't do that, for the record. And if you want to just ask Pyrodrone to please send you another, they probably will. If you felt like finding the squeaking and putting a little grease on it, that probably would fix it. But that's your call. You shouldn't do that out of the box, so. Mr. Eddie Nunez asking after the JB sound pack for OpenTX. Well, how is that going? I got an email. I haven't worked on it. Surprise. Shocker. It's going to take me a while to turn it around, but I got an email from Matt Crash Gordon with a list of words that he needs me to read. But then I saw a whole bunch of other people suggesting other things, and it looked like Matt gave me the basic list of words. But we gotta get people to do other recordings of like things I say on live streams and weird sounds and stuff. So I haven't recorded it yet. That's the short version. I haven't recorded it yet. I'm gonna make a OpenTX sound pack for my patrons. Should be interesting. We should really, you know what we should do? Can I just throw this out since I'm not the one doing the actual work? We should do it as a GitHub repo, and that way, if like I do say something funny in a live stream, people can add the sounds to the GitHub repo. Huh? That sounds good, doesn't it? Can you just store WAV files on a repo? All right, get on that. Whoever's in charge. Who isn't me. Make it happen. Anyway. Franklin Murphy, thank you for a $7 Canadian super chat. Thanks for all you do, he says. Demenis, thank you for a $5 super chat. Whenever I have a problem with a quad, I check Josh's channel first, and I usually find the answer. Yes. I feel like I owe you at least this. Thank you so much for your support, Demenis. Miguel T, thanks for a $5 super chat. His 2S Tiny Whoop died in midair. His flight controller died in midair. I noticed the camera and the receiver also dead. Only the VTX survived. Is it possible the FC had a voltage spike before dying? Miguel, I would guess that what happened is the 5-volt regulator on the flight controller died. The camera and the receiver are powered from the 5-volt regulator, so is the flight controller. So I would guess that the camera and the receiver are actually not damaged, they're just not powering up. And if you were to solder them to a new flight controller, they would probably work. Ghost Branch says there was an official Google Docs table for the sound pack. I'll look it up for you. Okay, great. Somebody emailed me a word list, but send me an invite. Send me a Google invite. All right. Kenneth Davis says, JB, software development via delegation. You laugh, but do you remember a couple weeks ago on the FPV news with JB and It's Blunty? We ranted, and my rant was that Express LRS doesn't have S-Bus output. Remember that? Because there's these Tiny Whoop flight controllers. A few flight controllers only have an S-Bus input. Emacs, you do it too. Emacs flight controllers, they do the same thing. They have an S-Bus input, and then they have like 2 other UARTs, but they don't give you a UART for that S-Bus input. So you have fewer UARTs than you would. And I said, Express LRS, can you just output S-Bus for these stupid flight controllers that only have an S-Bus input? And the Express LRS devs, all of them together collectively said, we don't want to do that. S-Bus is stupid and S-Bus should die. And I was like, yeah, you're right. S-Bus is stupid and S-Bus should die. And this whole inversion thing is stupid. But these people who have these flight controllers are screwed. So can't you fix it? And then one of the OpenTX devs came up with the idea of outputting inverted crossfire. And what that means is that if you have a flight controller with only an S-Bus input, it's got an inverter on that input and it can't read crossfire. But if you make the receiver output inverted crossfire, then you can hook that up to the S-Bus input on your stupid little flight controller and it'll work. And you'll have, okay, you won't have telemetry because crossfire is not bidirectional. It needs a TX and an RX. But you could actually have full Express LRS support without telemetry, full speed on, and they were like, hey, wait a minute. We could just invert this signal. Boom. And it really sets a bad precedent. Okay? Can I tell you? Number one, it teaches me that when I whine, then I get what I want. Don't do that. And number two, I joke, and I said, come on, coders, it's just code. Come on, just write some code. And they went, well, actually, we can't do that because it's very complicated and we don't want to. And then somebody went, well, actually, if we just flip this one bit, it'll output inverted S-Bus, and it's actually pretty easy. And then in like one day they did it, which again sets a very bad precedent for me. It just tells me that it's just going to be easy and I'll get what I want. So thank you, Express LRS dev. I said OpenTX. Wes, you're right. Did I say OpenTX? I apologize. One of the Express LRS devs. Apologize about that. Yeah. I guess there's a conversation about the OpenTX sound pack going on in the other window, and it must have just put the word OpenTX in my brain. Hey, Wesley is here. Wes, you're up late, man, or you're up early. Wesley Vardy. as long as he's here in the Discord. Oh, he doesn't make the Sunday stream because it's the middle of the night for him. But he makes the Monday stream because it's 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or whatever, 7 a.m. Wesley Vardy just did a really cool video about DJI FPV range. And if you haven't seen this, finish watching the whole live stream. But then go watch this. I think you're going to be really interested to see what kind of range he got on stock Omnis at 25 milliwatts, stock Omnis at 1200 milliwatts, iFlight Crystal, and then he also did a patch to figure out whether top or bottom or whatever was best for the DJI Goggle V2. Just some real solid range testing. And it's great. I'm really excited to see that. It gives you a sense of what you can do with DJI. Obviously, Wes is testing in like the best possible circumstances, a flying wing high up in the air. He's doing true long-range stuff. For people doing proximity, you're not going to get 5, 10, 13 kilometers like he did. But the problem is that when you're doing proximity, it all just depends on the obstacles between you and the quad. And so range testing becomes very difficult. So I really appreciate him putting in the time to do this work. His videos are also pretty entertaining too. He's a good production. So I'm waiting now. Thank you, Wes. Now here's the next thing I want. Damn it. So demanding. I'm excited because Wes has this antenna. Or if he doesn't have it, he's going to get it soon. They've sent it to him. This is the Maple Wireless Mjolnir antenna. And Maple Wireless says that this is some oddball combination of left and right polarization. And is just like the best antenna DJI it's ever seen. And of course, my reaction was right. Because the last time somebody told me that they had an antenna that did both left and right hand polarization, blah, 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 blah. It was the TBS Arum Polar antenna, and I think that was BS. I think it was BS. And then Alex Grieve tested it, and I would summarize what Alex Grieve said as, yes, the antenna is BS. So when this Mjolnir guys come along and say they're doing some kind of a funky thing, it's a good-looking antenna. Left and right polarization. I'm like, okay, prove it. So I said in a Facebook group, they were like, look at our antenna, it's the best. And I was like, send it to Wesley Vardy. And they were like, okay. So I'm waiting, Wes. I'm waiting. I'm curious. Nathaniel says, do people really just claim things and not expect people to take it apart and look? Well, yes. Because most people, and I'm no different, most people do not have the technical expertise to evaluate the claims made by a manufacturer. And that's why when I want to buy a laptop, I go look at Dave 2D. I go look at Gamers Nexus. I go look at Gamers Nexus doesn't really do laptops as much, do they? Well, anyway, my point is I'm not an expert on PC technology. So when I want to know about PC technology, when someone says, this new laptop has a heat pipe cooling system with vapor chambers, does it work? I don't know. I go and I look at an expert and they tell me whether it works. But most people just go, marketing! Oh, and then take my money. And that's nothing wrong with that. I do that sometimes too. But yeah, lots of people just take people's word for things. And yeah. Wes says, keen to see how this antenna stacks up. Apparently makes a big difference with multipathing. Not sure how it will do for long range, though. Wes, the first thing to do is to see if it's any good for long range. One thing I would say, Wes, Wes and I will just have this conversation here on stream. You guys can listen in. Wesley, one thing I would say is that the specific way that you're doing the testing does favor high gain antennas, doesn't it? I'm just thinking about this now because you do an out and back long range test, but like what? So in theory, if you had like you did the test with your 13 dBi antennas and you got great range, but they have a very narrow beam and they would not be suitable for everyday use. I don't know what we could do about that. Just, like RC Shim. Didn't RC Shim do some testing where he tested once with the antenna pointing straight out and once with the antenna angled 90 degrees? And that gave a sort of a sense of the cover. I mean, obviously you can't just do like a full isometric graph. And if in fact their right hand and left hand is supposedly better with lots of reflections, that's going to be very difficult to test in a repeatable way because reflections are very difficult to test in a repeatable way. Yeah. Here's my hot take. Do you think that the engineers at DJI are smart? Yes or no? Yes, obviously. They're incredibly smart. Do you think the engineers at DJI know how to design a wireless RF system? Clearly, they invented OcuSync. Okay. They decided to ship it with left-hand polarized antennas. So the idea that this other company is going to come along with this better antenna, and here's the thing. You can have RF systems that are designed to work with mixed polarization or custom antennas. But if the DJI system is designed to work with left-hand polarized antennas, which it is because that's how they ship it, I think that it's less plausible that you're going to come up with this other fancy design of antenna, because then why didn't they ship it with that kind of antenna? Well, okay, there's reasons. Maybe money. Maybe it was just too expensive. I don't know. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying, in my mind, when these Mjolnir wireless guys come out and they say, this is our new antenna design that is way better than what DJI has, just wait till you see how good it is. What I see in my head is a scale. And on one side of the scale is, you're smarter than the DJI engineers, and you designed an antenna for their radio that's better than the antenna they decided to ship with. And on the other side of the scale is, this is all a bunch of BS marketing hype. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah, absolutely, Brian Lewis. DJI is designing for price, designing for simplicity. They may have decided we get enough range on these cheap, crappy antennas. Why would we spend another, these antennas, I don't know, they probably cost $50, $80, $100. So they probably were like, why would we increase the price? You're 100% right. I'm not saying it's impossible. But these are just the thoughts that go through my head. In general, my impression is that the antenna needs to be matched to the radio. Anyway, we'll see. Wesley Vardy's going to do some testing. We'll see what happens. I don't know how you're going to test multipathing, though, Wesley. Like, are you going to... Like, the way that I test multipathing is I go to a parking garage, a car park. It's big, flat, concrete surfaces. The best for multipathing would be metal surfaces. There was a place I went that was a metal roofed, like a cattle ring, like a big, I don't know the word for it, I'm blanking on the word for these, an outdoor area with a roof over it where they, show horses and cattle, an arena. It's not the word for it. So, and it had a lot of multipathing because of the metal roof, made a lot of reflections. So, Parking garage is not repeatable in a consistent way, though. Is it, though, Wesley? I mean, nothing is perfect, but my thinking is, and you tell me I'm wrong, my thinking is that in a parking garage, if I fly down the parking garage, if I fly a repeatable path, I mean, obviously my altitude is going to vary somewhat, but to some degree I will be able to, I'm constrained by the garage itself. And I can try and fly as repeatable a path as possible. The thing is, when you do your out and back range tests, you're just testing the link margin. There are no obstacles. You're just testing the antenna sensitivity and the link margin, right? Which is a great way to do the test. It's some would say it's the only way to do the test. But if you say, well, but we have to take into account multipath rejection, there isn't a way outside of an RF lab to repeatably create multipath. I mean, you know what? There was a thing that Bruce Simpson did where he took a sheet of metal and he held it behind the antenna and then he kind of backed it up and moved it closer to create a single multipath reflection. That's interesting. But that, I don't know how real world that is. Anyway, there's no perfect answer. I guess there's one other way you could look at it, which is if I can't run a test that definitively shows that your antenna is better, then maybe your antenna is not better. Like, I hate it when I do a test and I say, well, product A is not better than product B. And product A's manufacturer comes back and goes, well, actually, it is better. Just the test conditions didn't show it better. Like, okay, well, you need to test it on a Monday morning on the 3rd of the month. The barometric pressure is between... And I'm like, oh, shut up. Maybe it's just not better. I don't know, man. I'm just throwing out ideas, making work for you. You decide how you want to run it. Hard to fly a fixed wing in a garage. You're 100% right about that. It would have to be a quad. I guess, Wes, here's what I would say, Wes. If the Maple Wireless wins in your long-range test, my first thought is going to be, are they just higher gain? Right? Are they just higher gain? So the test that you could do would be to do the iFlight Crystal versus the Maple Wireless, straight out and back, and then rotate them 90 degrees and do an off-axis test, and that will help you, that'll give you a sense of what their coverage pattern is. Okay? But then, yeah, then if they say, oh, no, it's only when there's multipath do you know that it's better, then you got to find a place that's going to create multipath and do your best to tell the difference between them. The good news is this. With DJI, you have the bit rate, which is a concrete measure of the quality of the link. Whereas with analog, you just got to go, I don't know, it kind of looked better. Anyway. All right. Moving on. Good conversation. Good conversation, Wes. Thanks for talking to me. Those of you who weren't able to see Wesley's side of the conversation, you got to become patrons and get in the Discord, see what you're missing out on. Marcus Miezal says, what about a long tunnel and you block direct line of sight? That's clever, Marcus. I mean, for multipathing to really matter, you need both the direct line of sight and the reflected, though, don't you? Fatboy FPV says we sell a dual right and left for VTX from AKK. That thing is bull. That thing is BS. It is BS. I haven't tested it. My professional opinion as a person who used to be an RF engineer, not an RF engineer necessarily, an RF professional, and I talked to other people who are RF professionals, and I'm not going to name their names because I don't want to call them out if they don't want to call themselves out. But I talked to other people who are RF professionals, and we all agree that this thing is bullshit. This is a video transmitter from AKK. It has parallel outputs. It does not have two video transmitters. It just parallels the outputs. That's my understanding. Fatboy FPV, if I'm wrong, you tell me. What I remember from when I first looked into this, and it just has two antennas. One is a left and one is a right. Guess what? Guess what? If you send the same signal through two antennas, one left, one right, then you just get a linear signal. It just cancels each other out. Now that's not going to happen here because these antennas because of the way they're aligned. That's not going to happen. What you're going to get is some bogus garbage signal, something between left and right hand polarized. And as Skadoosh points out, if they truly have paralleled the outputs, how are they matching the impedance? How are they matching the impedance of these outputs so that it's correctly 50 ohms? I mean, maybe they've done that. I don't know. I don't know what they've done. But based on what they seem to be saying they've done, it transmits left-hand and right-hand signals, which makes the transmission duple powerful. That's not how any of this works. And that's not just me giving a off-the-cuff hot take. I have talked to people who know RF and VTXs, and they also agree that this makes no goddamn sense. It doesn't make sense what they're doing. Now, somebody in the chat said, well, DJI has dual antennas. Yeah, DJI has 4 RF modules, 4 radios. Each radio has its own antenna, and they are designed to work together. Mo in the Discord says, doesn't MIMO take advantage of multipath? Yes. When you have a Wi-Fi radio with MIMO antennas, it's designed to use those antennas together in a special way. That's not what this AKK video transmitter is doing, because that is an analog transmission. It's not a digital transmission. It's not like they're doing MIMO. So what could they possibly be doing? I mean, look at this thing. Does this have 2 radio outputs? Does this have 2 transmitters? No, it doesn't. So it seems to me like all they're doing is putting the gosh darn outputs in parallel and Y-ing them. And I hope to God they've done some kind of impedance matching to get it back to 50 ohms. Or maybe they've designed their antennas to be 100 ohms. So when they put them in parallel, they're 50 ohms. I don't know. But whatever they're doing, that's just not how NTSC video transmissions work. It's bullshit. And this thing is, it's just, remember what I said about people just not caring about the technical details? Yeah. Okay, moving on. You can put 2 right hand or 2 left hand. Yeah, but then you just have a badly designed antenna. The nature of an RF antenna is that the radiating elements have to be aligned and oriented in a certain way relative to each other to control the antenna pattern. So if you have these 2 antennas and they're just floating out there in space, what's your antenna pattern? You don't know. Shaky Mike, if you take 2 50 ohm antennas and you just put them on a Y, you don't have 50 ohms anymore, do you? You can do that if you have some kind of impedance matching circuitry. I mean, I'm not an antenna designer, but that's my understanding. Am I wrong about that? Well, we'll see. Probably am. My antenna guy would know. I'm not gonna call out his name though. I talked to some people who know what they're talking about, and they also. Morton Upshot, the left and right hand polarized signals will not create destructive interference. When you transmit both a left and a right hand polarized signal sort of at the same time, they create a linear signal. It depends on the orientation of the antennas. It's not quite that simple, but that's the gist of it. Anyway, moving on. Hugo Ciento, thank you for 5 Brazilian reais. My receiver and VTX stopped turning on when only connected to the PC. They used to turn on just fine. Teach me something. How did your VTX turn on when it was plugged into USB? That doesn't make sense. No flight controller powers the VTX from USB. Right? I can't imagine. It sounds like you're... But it's not your 5-volt regulator, because when you're plugged into USB, 5 volts comes from the USB cable. So, I don't understand your question, Hugo. Some flight controllers will power the receiver from USB, and others won't. If your flight controller was powering the receiver from USB and then it stopped, the only thing that could cause that would be a hardware change in the flight controller. Skidoosh suggests that the 5-volt regulator blew. No, because when you're plugged into USB, you're not using the 5-volt regulator. Drone Pilot says, I have several quads that power the VTX from 5 volts. If you have a 5-volt video transmitter, so on a flight controller, there's going to be one 5-volt pad that powers from USB, and it's designed to run the receiver only. If you're running your VTX from the 5-volt pad that's powered on from USB, there's a chance that the VTX will pull too much power and shut down the USB cable port. Maybe that's not happening. So if you've wired your 5-volt receiver to that, or your 5-volt VTX to that specific 5-volt pad, yes, I agree, it'll power up from USB, but that's not usually how it's supposed to be wired. The only thing I could think of that would stop your receiver from powering up from USB would be a like hardware damage or something. But it's hard to know. It's hard to imagine how that would have happened. I can confirm that software will not do that. Rory Duncan, very good point. Rory Duncan says, I just got Express LRS working today. I spent a long time figuring out why my analog knobs and sliders weren't working. I don't think that limitation gets discussed enough. Yeah, Rory Duncan is pointing out that the aux channels in Express LRS are not full precision channels. They'll be like 2 position, 3 position. I think there's 1 8-position or 16-position channel. I can't remember the exact breakdown. Not all the channels. You can't just have full range aux channels in Express LRS. That's one of the trade-offs they make for their performance. Jeremy Sarge says, would putting an analog amplifier in line with my Sharkbite give me greater range? Yeah, probably. On the quad? How are you going to mount an amplifier on the quad, though? Amplifiers are pretty big and pretty power heavy. So this is Wesley Vardy is sharing a quote from the Maple Wireless guys. Circularly polarized radio waves will change polarization direction after reflection. That is correct. In an environment with obstacles, DJI is using the same left-handed circular polarized. It can only receive the second reflected signal. That is incorrect. That is incorrect. So it's at least incomplete. So if you've got a left-hand polarized antenna, it's going to have, let's say, 15 dB of like rejection to right-hand polarized signals. Okay. Which means that cross-polarized reflection is going to come in weaker. It's going to come in weaker, number one, because it's cross-polarized to the antenna, and it's going to cause as much as maybe 15 dB of loss. And then it's going to also lose a little bit of energy to the reflection. Maybe 2 or 3 dB per, I don't know. I'm just making that. It depends on the material it bounces off of, how much is absorbed, how much is reflected. So that reflection is going to be maybe 20 dB weaker. Okay. Now, let's say you've got a situation where you've got the DJI quad sitting in the middle of a big metal building. Okay. So it's transmitting signal, and there is a direct line path between the goggles and the quad, and then also there's a bajillion reflections. Okay? In that case, the direct line path is going to be, let's say, 15 to 20 dB stronger than the reflections, because it's not cross-polarized, and because it hasn't bounced off of anything. Which means that, and this is the whole reason we use circular polarized antennas, which means that the reflections are going to basically get drowned out by the direct line path. Now, we know that's not 100% true, because when we fly analog video transmitters in high multipath environments, we see the effect of reflections and they get pretty bad. So the one reason for that is that the antennas that we use usually do not send, they usually don't have a spectacular axial ratio, which means they do not send 100% left-hand polarized or 100% right-hand polarized signals. Even for antennas that list themselves as having a really good axial ratio, the off-axis rejection doesn't seem to be like super high in the real world. So let's go back to this claim by Maple Wireless that if you have an antenna that is cross-polarized to the signal that's coming in, then it can't receive the signal. That's not true, because if I've got a signal that's coming in at negative 60 dBm, let's say I lose 15 dB to the cross-polarization. Well, okay, that's negative 75 dBm. I might have sensitivity down to negative 90 or negative 100 dBm. I'm still going to be able to receive that signal. It'll just be weaker, okay? But more fundamentally, in most real-world situations, when you have a reflected path, you also have a direct line path. And the issue is that the reflection is interfering and corrupting the direct signal, not that the direct signal is completely absent, okay? In a situation where you have both a direct line path and a reflected path, you want the strongest off-axis rejection that you can get so that you can ignore the reflected signal and focus on the direct signal. And that's a situation where the Maple Wireless, the cross-polarized left-hand and right-hand, it seems like they would be worse. If they're going to pick up both left and right-hand polarized, okay. But the situation that they're trying to get you to think about is a situation where the direct line path is completely blocked and the only signal you're getting is a reflection. Okay, let's pretend that's happening. In that situation, then you would want to get as much of the off-axis, the cross-polarized signal as you possibly could. But the thing is, I don't think you can have an antenna that is good at rejecting multipath bounces when you do have a direct line signal, and also good at bringing in the cross-polarized bounces when you don't have a direct signal. So I guess it's just which of those situations do you think is more likely? I don't know. They go on to say, oh, no, this one. The combination of a left-hand circular polarized antenna and a right-hand circular polarized antenna can always receive the strongest reflected signal in the shortest time. Yes, that's true, except the whole point of using circular polarization is that you want to reject the multipath bounces to minimize the effect of multipath interference. So it sounds like you're saying that your antennas are bad at rejecting off-axis multipath reflections. They can take advantage of reflections in the environment. That would be true if the system was built as a MIMO system that was designed to take advantage of those bounces. And for all we know, DJI is. But if DJI is a MIMO system that was designed to take advantage of left and right-hand polarized signals, like Wi-Fi APs are, then why didn't they ship it with one left and one right-hand antenna? That's the question. Last comment on this before we move on, because I know I've been ranting about this for a minute. I saw a video where someone tested the DJI antennas and said they're not even polarized. They tested the antennas and they were like, yeah, they're pretty much linear. Now, I can't even tell you who that was. So I don't know if it's true. But Maple Wireless is giving you these left and right-hand polarized antennas. And there's a fair chance, based on my experience with consumer-grade antennas, that an antenna sold as left-hand polarized actually has a crappy axial ratio and is pretty much just transmitting a linear signal anyway. At which point, all this fancy left-hand, right-hand stuff goes out the window. Okay. Enough about that. Mo says the V2 DJI antennas are linear. Mo also says DJI is a MIMO system. Yes, Mo, I agree with you that DJI is a MIMO system, but is it MIMO based on polarization? So you can have a MIMO system that is designed to receive a left and a right-hand polarized signal at the same time, and you can have a MIMO system that is designed to receive all left-hand reflections, and that's what I think DJI is. Mo says the DJI V2 antennas are linear. If that's the case, then this whole Maple Wireless thing goes out the window. Anyway, moving on. Hello, FPV. Thank you for a $5 super chat. With cellular speeds around 100 megabit per second, would using LTE MIMO cell networks to control the drone aircraft work? No, Hello, FPV, because the latency is too high. The ping time is too high. You could use cellular to control an autonomous craft. Like if it was running a waypoint mission and you just need to update the waypoints, yes, you could do that with cellular. But for real-time control, you would need 5G. 5G has low enough latency in some cases to control a craft. But the 5G with the lowest latency has really poor range, and you're not likely to actually have that anywhere that you would want it. Supernatural FPV wants to know, what is the best HD micro whoop on the market? Supernatural, the absolute best micro with HD on it, if you're thinking about DJI, it would be a self-made toothpick. You can get a naked Vista toothpick down around 60 grams. The 3S, maybe 65, I don't remember. The 3S naked toothpick, was it higher than that? Damn, was that the dry weight or the weight with the battery? Crap. I think you can. A 3S naked Vista toothpick, around, let's say, I think 60-ish, 75. That's the weight of an analog. It can't have been that lightweight. I'm not going to look up the video to remind myself. That must be the dry weight, though. Those are really good. If you prefer shark bite, you can get it down even lighter. But those are all ones you're going to have to make yourself. As far as buying stuff off the shelf, I think the iFlight Alpha A85 or A75 would be something to think about. It's very hard to make. I mean, once you get up to about 2.5 inches, like the Gep RC Rocket Light is really fun, but most people wouldn't consider that a micro. So, what was the weight of that thing? I mean, I'd have to go through the whole dang video. Where's that video? No, show all. I did a video. Here, oh, this is the one. Best 3-inch toothpick. Do I give the weight? DJI, the 3S Naked Vista Pick. Is the weight here? Wouldn't that be nice if it was? Toothpick, 3-inch quadcopter, and it has a naked Vista in it, which is Caddx Vista that has been decased, so it's just naked boards. It saves about 12 grams. And I'll go ahead and put the specs for this quadcopter. There you go. 125 grams. Thank you. I thought 60 grams. It was 80 grams dry, 125 grams. This thing was really fun to fly. It's not as light as some people would prefer, but on 3S with the right motors, it was really, really fun to fly. I enjoyed it a lot. That's about as light as you're going to get a Naked Vista, as you're going to get a DJI quad. I know probably Mr. Shutterbug could do it lighter, but for us mere mortals, that's about as light as it's going to get. Black Tiger, the sending polarization must match the receiving polarization. If you put right-hand antennas on your Vistas, you do want right-hand antennas on the goggles. I do agree. Mr. Shutterbug, good point. Mr. Shutterbug, why are you not a moderator? Why are you not in blue? Let's make you a moderator. Mr. Shutterbug says, I found that if you have a linear antenna on your Whoop, you can use one right-hand and one left-hand polarized antenna on a rapid fire and get good results. Yeah, so what's happening there, Mr. Shutterbug, is a circular polarized antenna can receive a linear polarized signal. There is about 3 dB of attenuation. So it doesn't matter if you've got a left and a right polarized antenna on your goggle. If you have a linear signal coming from the quad, you're getting about 3 dB of attenuation through both antennas, assuming we believe the specs. But the advantage is that when you have two linear antennas, you get 0 dB of attenuation. But as soon as they go out of alignment, you get a lot of polarization loss. So by having a circular antenna on one side and a linear on the other, you get constant polarization loss at 3 dB, which can be advantageous. Mr. Shutterbug, as long as you're here, what's the lightest Naked Vista build you've done? How light can you get a Naked Vista build that, like, flies worth a damn? R.C. Ritter says, how light for a full Vista? R.C. Ritter, the full Vista is like, what is it? How much do you save by nakedizing the Vista? I think it's like 8 or 10 or 12 grams, which doesn't sound like a lot, but on stuff this size, it makes a big difference. Does a quad moving make a linear antenna into a circular one? No, it does not. Kyle K, yeah, no, it's consistent loss. The polarization loss between a linear and a circular is about 3 dB. However, if you have two linear antennas and they are 90 degrees out of polarization with each other, that's like 15 or 20 dB of loss. So the idea is that you accept a constant 3 dB of loss, and it's no longer dependent on the orientation of the transmission antenna. Which, when you've got a quad where the orientation of the transmission antenna is changing, that can be worth doing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to a person whose name I'm not going to try to read, who says love from Vietnam. I'm sure I don't know how to pronounce Vietnamese at all. Looks like it's about 10 or 11 grams, according to John Goblin in the Discord, when you make a Vista naked. Sway on FPV wants to know the purpose of super rate. Sway on FPV, let's take a look at that. Talk about beta flight rates. Any day now. There we go. Let's connect. So if we go to the PID tuning tab here and go to rate profile, we can see what super rate does just by looking at this graph. So what let's do is let's change this to 0, 0, and 0. Okay, so here we've got completely linear rates, which means there's a 100% linear relationship between the deflection of the stick and the rate that the quad tries to spin. If we add expo, what that does is it adds it means that we get more precision at the center of the stick. Okay, we get smaller changes in the quad's movement at the center stick. And then as we get to full stick deflection, do you see that when I add expo, the center stick gets, some would say the center stick gets softer. We get more precision in the center stick. And then there is a transition to this less precision part. Another way to think about it is that the steeper the line, the less precision you're going to get in your stick movement. And the more precise your finger movements are going to have to be. So by adding expo, we make the center stick less steep. We get more precision, and we can make larger movements of the stick with our fingers here around the center. But then as we transition to full stick deflection, we get less precision, and it's harder to move precisely. And that's okay, because when you're trying to do very precise little movements around the center stick, you need that precision. But when you go to full stick deflection, do you care if you're going 850 or 900 degrees per second? No, you're just going whoop. So the idea behind expo is that you can have precision where you need it, and trade off for lack of precision where you don't need it. Now notice that when I add or remove expo, the end point of this curve doesn't change. We're still at 200 degrees per second. Our full stick deflection is 200 degrees per second. Okay? Now I'm going to put the expo back to 0. Now we have linear rates, and I'm going to add S rate or super rate. Well, they're just calling it rate, but there's RC rate, there's S rate or super rates. That's what this is. As I add super rates, watch what happens. Do you see that I am getting an expo-like curve in the center stick? But instead of bending the curve down, leaving the endpoint alone, I am stretching up the outside of the curve. So S rate, think of S rate as bending up the outside of the curve, the full stick deflection, while leaving the center alone. And think of expo as bending down the center of the curve while leaving the endpoint alone. That's basically what those two things are. Let's see what the chat has to say about that. Now, there's one other thing I want to say, which is if you are a Betaflight old timer like me, and you 1.20, no. What are my rates? Oh, I don't know. I was just pull them out of a text file. If you're an old timer like me and you know what your preferred Betaflight rates are, fine. But if you don't have preferred rates already, by God, stop. Don't do this. Switch to actual rates. Actual rates are so much simpler. In actual rates, you have a center sensitivity, which changes the center sensitivity. It makes the center more or less sensitive. Then you have what's called a max rate, which changes the full stick deflection while leaving the center mostly alone. And you have an expo, which does the same thing as before. It curves that curve down, although you can see again, it's kind of leaving the center alone. That's very interesting. So center sensitivity, in the center, you kind of have a mostly linear segment. The max rate changes the endpoint, and then the expo changes the shape of the transition between the center and the max rate. And that is so much simpler. I mean, I know it may not sound simpler, but it's so much simpler to understand and tweak. Because with Betaflight rates, changes to expo change the center sort of and the transition point. And changes to S rate change the endpoint and, yeah, anyway. Mike H is wondering, why set expo in Betaflight versus your transmitter? Betaflight prefers to have a linear input from the stick. if you add expo in the transmitter, you can also get more complex and sophisticated curves using the flight controller rates versus your transmitter rates. RC rate is just a linear change in the base sort of steepness of the rate that expo and S rate are modifying. Why is standard expo 0.54 though with a, I don't know. Somebody decided that was a good one. I don't know the answer to that. Looks like Mr. Shutterbug has a naked Vista under 90 grams with a 550 milliamp hour 2S battery. Is that true? Hey, don't do that. I can't seem to click away to YouTube links from chat. Go figure. Why can't I do that? Copy link address. No, not studio.youtube.com. YouTube keeps going to studio.youtube.com. 3-inch baby tooth. 3-inch baby tooth under 90 grams all up. Very impressive. Pretty impressive. This guy knows how to make lightweight drones. He does not like big butts. And he cannot lie. He makes some of the lightest quadcopters you've ever seen. I would say if he made a 90-gram baby tooth with a naked Vista, that's probably about as light as anybody could do it. And if anybody makes one lighter, he'll do it even lighter just to beat them. I'll say. That's what I'll say. Say yay. I said the thing I was about to say about expo on the transmitter. You should have linear input. Your controller should be linear. And then Betaflight should do its rate calculations. The Betaflight rate curve is more sophisticated than the curve. You have more tweakability in the curve. Putting an expo curve in the transmitter, just you can get what you want out of Betaflight. There's no advantage to doing it in the radio. You want the smallest and most even movements in the RC signal that then the flight controller will do its smoothing and interpolation on. Yeah. Alrighty. Mr. Shutterpeg says, yeah, you could make it lighter if you made it less durable. You could also make it lighter by switching to 2.4 gigahertz Express LRS. Ha-ha! With a ceramic antenna. Somebody earlier in the chat was saying, can I use my whining influence to get a Crossfire flight control, Whoop flight controller with Crossfire built in? Probably not. My whining does not motivate TBS. TBS is immune to my whining. As well they should be. My whining does not motivate TBS to do anything. Okay. CMYK FPV in the Discord server. Thank you for being a patron, CMYK FPV. My VTX went out after a crash, wired up a new one out of the box, and still no video. Reapplied the VTX table, still no dice. So the VTX table isn't going to cause the VTX to turn on. I mean, if you're on the wrong channel, then the VTX table might help you get on the right channel. The first thing I would ask is the VTX powered up? If the VTX is not powered up, then you gotta figure out if it's getting the voltage that it wants. It is powered up. How do you know it's powered up? No offense, but how do you know it's powered up? What's the symptom that tells you it's powered up? Yeah, Expo in the radio is more for fixed wings where there is no flight controller. Okay, the LEDs are on. Okay, the LEDs are on. What channel does it say that it's on? based on the LEDs. Lord Hendricks says, is there a way to fix a VTX that was on with no antenna? What happens when you do that? You burn out the transmission amplifier. There is no way to fix it. I mean, you could desolder the chip that contains the amplifier and then replace it. Most people aren't going to do that. I can cycle channels. My 3.5-inch monitor gives interference. Race 8. Okay, so the LEDs say you're on race 8. What do you see in your goggles on race 8? We're going to get this one. Scroll says, I'm about to build my first 5-inch. Should I go with 2306 or 2207? Doesn't matter. If it's your first 5-inch, you definitely won't notice the difference. And even if you're an expert, you probably wouldn't notice the difference. Between those two, 2207, I think 2207 has a slightly larger stator volume. So, I mean, theoretically, 2207 could be a little more powerful, but a little heavier. But either of those is going to be fine. Just, flip a coin. 2306 is probably what most people would go with as their first 5-inch motor. Darker gray static is on race 8. Okay, so the VTX is transmitting, and it's on that channel. At that point, VTX table is not relevant. Darker gray static. It's weird that you have static instead of solid dark gray. If the VTX was sending sync pulses, you would see dark gray. So it's weird that there's static. It makes me wonder if you're not really on R8. ALUSMC says, I have the Beta FPV V4 for the Tiny Trainer. Does your Betaflight setup work with it? I think it should. I don't remember which flight controller did I use? ALUSMC. Which flight controller did I use in my video? I don't remember. So CMYK FPV, if you have no static but a dark gray, that's a camera issue. So I would replace the camera next or check the wiring of the camera. ALUSMC, if I use the Beta FPV V3, probably my setup will work. The V4 changed how you wire up the receiver, but I don't think they changed which UART the receiver's on. That's basically the main thing that would change, is which UART the receiver is on. That guy Carlos says, I cannot get to raceband 8 on my Nanohawk X. That guy Carlos, the Emax VTXs come locked, and they will not go to certain channels until you unlock them. The way that you unlock them is by holding down the button on the VTX and then plug in power. And then a blue light will either come on or turn off. And one of those is locked and one of those is unlocked. I don't remember which. Yeah. It doesn't seem to me like that could be like a gray screen in the goggle could be your antenna. Cyclimbo, that's a great tip. Cyclimbo suggests that if the flight controller is messed up, you can connect the camera video wire directly to the VTX video wire and take the flight controller out. That is a great tip. Sway on FPV says, can I just do my rates in Betaflight and then use Desmos like you showed to convert them to actual rates, as actual rates is going to be the default in Betaflight 4.3.0? You can. I suspect the rates won't be exactly the same, but you probably can. Demenis asks, I just recently had a VTX go out on me on a tiny whoop. I have no idea how to get it to turn back on. Sometimes I see video if I put my goggle antennas right up to the whoop, but the signal is still bad. It sounds like your VTX is damaged or your video transmitter antenna is damaged. I don't know if there's a fix there. I think it's just going to be a new antenna or a new video transmitter or a new flight controller. Is the lens cap off? Good question, CMYK. Is the lens cap off? He says he doesn't have OSD. If the lens cap was on, he would have OSD. Pretorius, I have not tried the karate tune that was on Evan Turner's quad. I don't know what that is. Mad Max FPV, I don't think that anti-gravity has anything to do with prop wash, for the record. I know, I appreciate you trying to help people out. I'm not sure that's the right advice. I agree with ZFPV. Anti-gravity is anti-gravity increases, it boosts the I term on fast throttle moves. Yeah, specifically when you chop the throttle and the nose dips, anti-gravity fixes that. That's the short version. Joseph Dawson, good question. If you have Joseph Dawson, going back to the question about the Tiny Whoop VTX that you have to hold the goggles up against, is it in pit mode? Do Tiny Whoop VTXs typically even support pit mode? Last episode wants to know, which remote should I get, TBS Tango 2 Pro or TBS Mambo? Like, that's kind of like asking, should I get pizza or should I get steak? Like, if you can't decide, they're both good, can't you decide? Like, do you want a gamepad style or do you want a full-size controller like the Mambo? Do you want Crossfire or do you want Tracer? That's a tougher question. Crossfire versus Tracer is a tougher question for a beginner. Between the two, I say get Immersion RC Ghost or Express LRS. Crossfire is fantastic for long range. Crossfire is great for casual flying. The place where Crossfire falls down is if you have multiple pilots in the air at the same time, specifically racing, or if you fly casually in large groups. If you have multiple pilots in the air at the same time, Crossfire is in a relatively narrow frequency band, which will get interference between the pilots, including micro failsafes or full failsafes. This is especially true in Europe, where the 868 megahertz band is extremely narrow. So if you regularly fly in large groups, Crossfire may not be for you, although people will point out that, yes, there are ways to work around it. It's not always an issue, but it is sometimes an issue. Racers complain about it a lot. Now, TBS Tracer addresses this by moving to the 2.4 gigahertz band. Okay, fine. But TBS Tracer insists on being low latency only, which sounds like a good thing. But the fact that Tracer uses this low latency FLRC modulation means that it has very short range compared to Crossfire. Now, for perspective, very short range means that under ideal conditions, you'll go 20 kilometers instead of 80 kilometers. And you might be tempted to say, oh, well, I'm only going to go 2 kilometers, so who cares? Under ideal conditions. Under ideal conditions, DJI FPV can go 13 kilometers. But nobody who's doing freestyle around a park is going 13 kilometers because stuff is in the way. So the practical real-world range of Tracer for some people is closer to 2 or 3 kilometers. Which is less, and you start putting in concrete buildings and bandos, and it gets even shorter than that. So the situation that you had with Crossfire was that pretty much no matter what, you never had to think about failsafe. You always were going to lose your video link first. And that's a nice place to be, because you're looking at your video link. You can see when it's getting bad. With Tracer, sometimes some people have to think about whether their control link is going to fail safe before their video link. And some people don't like that. And that's especially true if you are not using ludicrous power. See, when Tracer originally came out, it maxed out at, I think it was 100 milliwatts. And the range was really bad. And then they were like, okay, give it to the beans. And they turned Tracer up to 1 watt. And it's true, with sufficient application of power, you can push RF signals pretty far. But it really sucks your battery and your controller down pretty fast and creates a lot of noise in the 2.4 gigahertz environment around you. So that's where Immersion RC Ghost comes in. because Immersion RC Ghost operates in the 2.4 gigahertz band, just like Tracer, so it avoids the interference issues with large groups of people, and it solves the problem in the European Union with the 868 megahertz band being very narrow. Yay! And Immersion RC Ghost does the same FLRC modulation that Tracer does, so it can basically do the same thing Tracer's doing. Shorter range, low latency, high packet rate. But then if you put it in a different mode, it does long range with still pretty good. Like Immersion RC Ghost, their normal mode is 50 hertz, similar to Crossfire, and their race mode is, I think it's 160 hertz, similar to Crossfire, high speed mode. Tracer is 250 hertz and uses FLRC. Ghost also has a 250 hertz mode. Ghost also has a 500 hertz mode. So the reason I say I'm a fan of Ghost is that it gives you the option to be super low latency at shorter range or higher latency at longer range. Whereas Tracer is like, nope. You want long range? You get Crossfire. Get out of here. You're not welcome here anymore. You go to the Crossfire side of the room. It's like, well, but it's built into your chipset. You could just do a firmware update and you could give me the long range stuff I want without me having to buy additional hardware. Nope. Tough cookies. You're in the Tracer camp. We only do 250 hertz FLRC here. Well, maybe I'm just going to go over to the Ghost side of the room where I can do whatever I want. And Express LRS is the same. It gives you that flexibility to choose. Of course, it is pretty cool being a black sheep. So, I just wish they would unlock that in the firmware and let people have it all. Tracer is enough for most people, though. So if you're trying to decide, that's the question that started this, Mambo versus Tango 2. I would probably take the Mambo. If I have to pick, I think most people are going to get enough range out of Tracer that they won't mind. And I think the Mambo is the gamepad style radio. I personally don't like the ergonomics of it. But you might like it. A lot of people like it. Yehoshua Movsas asks, does the Radio Master TX12 work with the DJI V2 goggles? Yehoshua, the DJI goggles can work with any radio you want. You just have to install the compatible receiver in the quad. I got the hiccups, I'm sorry. The DJI Air Unit and Vista will not bind to the Radio Master directly. You just install a compatible receiver. They can work with anything. Kenneth Davis says, yeah, you just proved that TBS doesn't listen to your whining. The thing is, TBS used to not put MMCX connectors on their video transmitters. They only did UFL. And a few manufacturers starting putting MMCX connectors on. And I was like, yeah, this is good. UFL's a pain in the ass. And TBS was like, no! MMCX is bad and we're not doing it. And I kept whining about that. And they did eventually change their mind. Now, I'm not taking any credit for that. I wouldn't insult TBS by implying that they give a damn about my whining. But maybe they just, their customers were asking for it. So on some level, I hope that if I keep whining about the fact that Tracer could do long-range modes if they would just unlock it in firmware. I hope if I keep whining about that, then their own customers will be like, yeah, why don't they do that? Why are they making me buy a Crossfire receiver? And if I keep whining about it, maybe their customers will whine about it enough that then they will give a crap. That's my hope. Ranger says, is it possible to install Ghost, Tracer, Crossfire, whatever, and a Spectrum DX8? It is not. Spectrum DX9 and higher can support Crossfire, but not any of the others. But DX8, I don't think, can do any of them. Okay, fine. Yeah, no, sorry. Kyle K points out that the big Crossfire module can take a PPM input from the trainer port on the DX8. Yeah, but the latency on that is garbage. It's like it's if you're flying planes, maybe that's okay. But for proximity quads or racing, the latency is garbage for that. Don't do that. Thank you to the people in the Discord who are helping CMYK FPV continue troubleshooting his camera issue. Aber the Ham says, I went MMCX a while back. I have since regretted it and gone back to UFL. I didn't like how rigid the MMCX antennas are or how much they stick out from whatever hardware they're plugged into. Aber, you're not wrong about that. There definitely are disadvantages to MMCX. I just think people should have the choice. So... I think the MMCX is way more durable than UFL, and it is way less likely to pop off accidentally. Also, UFL is not rated for very many connection cycles, and I think MMCX is rated for more, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Lord Hendricks says, did you ever talk to your neighbors about what you're up to? How do you approach your neighbors and make them not pay you any mind? Well, Lord Hendricks, when we moved to this place, my wife and I, we both lived in Atlanta. We lived in suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, and they were all like the last place we lived together had a homeowners association. We rented for about a year before we decided where we were going to buy a place. I owned a townhome in another neighborhood with a homeowners association, and it was fine. Like I would not choose to live in a neighborhood with a HOA again, but at the time it was the right thing. It was nice. It was for me. Not the HOA specifically. I just liked the townhome. It was my first place that I ever bought. But we both wanted to move somewhere where we could do things like gardening, maybe keep sheep or pigs or rabbits or chickens. If you wanted to set up some targets and shoot guns in your backyard, nobody would. So we specifically moved to an unincorporated county outside of city limits where there's none of that. And so, like once a year, one of my neighbors has this giant Christian tent revival in one of his back fields, and like 50 people will come down the road and park on his property, and we'll hear the Christian music going off in the distance. Every 4th of July, all my neighbors shoot fireworks in the air. Sometimes somebody's out there shooting a shotgun or shooting a rifle or plinking a pistol. Once our neighbor's donkey kept getting out and coming over and eating our chicken feed, and we just look out the window and there'd be a freaking donkey in the chicken house, and we'd be like, Shane, your donkey's out again. And he'd be like, sorry, and he'd come get it. And then eventually we put up an electric fence, and that stopped happening. My point is, I never approached my neighbors about the fact that I fly quads, and they never approached me about the fact that they, were raising a steer or having a Christian revival. For the most part, we all just do our own thing. Now, if you live in a neighborhood with a HOA or nosy neighbors, I don't know what to tell you. Good luck. So, I don't know. You just got to figure that out, because I don't have a great answer for you. Cool Cat says, what is the best toothpick or tiny whoop kit? Are you talking about with DJI? Cool Cat? Seyun Gyu. Let me see if I can find him. Best RTF kit. I missed a super chat. Damn it. I'm sorry, guys. I reloaded the window, And when I reloaded the window, I lost the super chat. Let me go back. I've lost a couple super chats. I apologize. Let me see if I can get those back by going through the YouTube back end. Hold on one second. Super chats. Let's see. I got it. That guy Carlos, thank you for $2 Canadian. Thanks, have a toonie, he says. Seung Gyu wants to know what is the best RTF kit, specifically asking, hang on, let me double check. Specifically asking about a toothpick or tiny whoop. Ready to fly, toothpick, or tiny whoop. So those aren't the same thing. Between them, I'd probably take a toothpick, but if you want a tiny whoop, you need a tiny whoop. Best ready to fly tiny whoop. Is it the Mobula 6? Like, the Mobula 6 isn't perfect, but no, are there any tiny whoops that are like really like good in terms of durability and stuff? I mean, you could get a legit tiny whoop from Jesse Perkins. Newbie Drone Hummingbird Pro is pretty good. None of them are perfect. Newbie Drone Hummingbird Pro is pretty good. That's a good one if you're in the U.S. If you're outside the U.S., the shipping is too much and it's probably not worth it. Beta FPV Meteor 65 is good. It's a little more expensive than the Mobula 6, though. It's a little more expensive. It's 120 bucks. The Meteor 6 is, oh, come on. Meteor 75, Meteor 65, my bad. Mobula 6. I'm sorry. We're gonna get this. We're gonna get this. Mobula 6. What are they running? Oh, it's the same price. Are they the same price? Are they actually in stock? They are. Wow, they're the same price. That's interesting. If they're the same price, that's tough. That's tough. They're both pretty good. Which is better? I like the BT 2.0 on the Meteor 65. That's better. I converted my Mobula 6 over to BT 2.0. Tiny Hawk 2. That's true. Now, the Tiny Hawk 2 isn't really a whoop. It's a little too big. It's 75 millimeter in size. That's not the... That's... Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Tiny Hawk 2. I don't know if I liked this one. I thought this one was too heavy. The original Tiny Hawk was pretty decent. I think this one was too heavy. I didn't like how it flew. These guys are saying Mobula 6 is better. The Newbie Drone does have some proprietary BS, Aber the Ham. That's a good point. The Newbie Drone has proprietary motor plugs. You can only use Newbie Drone motors. That is pretty annoying. Is there a new Mobula 6 with Express LRS? Really? Is that for real, Chibi Kaiju? Yeah, Bobby Bags, the Mobula 6 used to be 85 bucks, and that really put it over the top for me compared to the Meteor. When the Mobula 6 is 120 bucks, the Meteor is pretty good. I don't know if it's better, though, because the durability of the Beta FPV stuff leaves a lot. It's very unreliable. But Happy Model durability isn't spectacular either. I think I would get the Mobula 6 over the Meteor 65. That's what I would say. Now, if you want a toothpick, what's a great... what about the GEP-RC Phantom? Now, this is not exactly a toothpick. It's a lot like a toothpick, though, isn't it? In some ways, it might be better. Because, what size motors? Hang on. If they're 1102 motors, then I'm going to change my mind. What size motors? What size motors? Tell me. Why can I not know the size of the motors? For real? Are you kidding me? I probably scrolled right past them. 1103. All right. That's not 1102. Okay, that's not 1102. 1102 is a little. I just want a little more. This one I think is pretty good. I think this one is really good. As a toothpick style fun flyer. Anyway. The FAA guy left? He left the stream, Jeremy Sarge? What happened? Nanohawk X. That's DJ, though. DJI. Is he asking for DJI? Jeremy Sarge says the Phantoms are weak. How are they weak? They break too easily? Is this DJI? I think the Nanohawk X is DJI, isn't it? 1202.5. That's a good motor. Crib from the best. That's Kebaba right there. Is this DJI? No. No, not running off a 451S. No, that's dumb. That's a dumb thing to say. Oh yeah, that's pretty good too. I gotta try this one out. Add to cart. Okay. Emacs, send me a Nanohawk X, please. I promise I will review it. Okay, I don't promise. But I actually, unlike the times when you sent me quads that I either wasn't interested in or didn't have time for at that moment. So you sent me quads and then I didn't review them. This one I'm actually interested in because I just got done reviewing the HX115 and this seems like it's pretty similar, but maybe better. But it doesn't have Express LRS. Emacs, where are you? Send me one. Maybe they'll send me one. Anybody out there got a contact at Emacs? I probably do. Somewhere. Aber the Ham, thank you for a $5 super chat. Will the multi-protocol module in the TX16S get Express LRS? No, it won't. Aber, the Express LRS requires the long range, the LoRa Semtech chipset, and it doesn't have that. So it can't get it unless they add a chip to it. I mean, they could make a 5-in-1 module instead of a 4-in-1 module with Express LRS. They 100% could. The current multi-protocol modules will not get Express LRS, though. Bill, the only exception to that would be, in theory, the Jumper T18, which has an R9 chipset in it, could run Express LRS if firmware was made to do it. Bill, thank you for a $5 super chat. Can you whine about Rush or Immersion RC making a SharkBite 1-watt VTX? Yes, they're working on it, Bill. HC0 is working on a 1-watt VTX. So as far as Rush or Immersion RC, I think they know the demand is there. They've just got to gauge how much work it's going to take. If HD0 doesn't have a 1-watt reference design, then it's going to be awfully hard for Immersion RC to go, yeah, let me take that on. If the manufacturer of the chips can't even put out a reference design, then, I mean, it's a big ask for Rush or Immersion RC to take that on. Maybe they will. Not to say that they couldn't, but I think they're aware. Anyway. Evan Turinen wants to know my thoughts on the SharkBite 500 milliwatt module. Are they still even making that? I have the impression they've moved away from it. The problem with the 500 milliwatt module was that it had crap durability because it was 2 boards, and in between the boards were some stacking pins and an MMCX connector. And that was extremely likely to be damaged in hard impacts. So that's why they've moved to the single board solutions now. I'm not even sure they're still manufacturing those, although I don't know for sure. Thank you, Say Yay, for a $2 super chat. CMYKFPV, did you get it figured out? Was it your OSD chip on your flight controller? Yep. The Savage Bee is a good 1S. The Savage Bee, Brian Lewis in the Discord suggests the Newbie Drone Savage Bee. Newbie Drone Savage Bee. The Savage Bee is good. It's a 1S 3-inch toothpick style quad. The Savage Bee, I test flew it against the FPV Cycle toothpick, or a baby tooth, and it was good, but the baby tooth was so much better that the Savage Bee has always sort of remained in the back of my mind, which it doesn't really deserve. But yeah. The baby tooth is the best, no question. You just have to build it yourself. That's the problem for some people. Sway on FPV wants to know the best quad that would run on a 3S 450 battery under 200 Australian dollars. What runs on a 3S 450? So that's going to be like a 3-inch toothpick with, I don't know, a 3-inch toothpick with like, what's KV motors? Like 4,000 KV motors? I don't know. A toothpick 3. Yeah, that's it. David Fall. I think he wants a bind and fly, though. A toothpick 3, I'm thinking of my toothpick, which ran on that. The Larva X. Ooh. That's a good choice. That's a good thinking. What's happened to the Larva X? Larva X can't run on 3S, can it? They say it can, but it's not. Doesn't it like 1303 5000 kV motors? Agree. You're going to start with a 3S 450 milliamp hour battery, 3-inch props, 1303 5000 kV motors. How about this? This is 1103. That's the same thing, right? Lot. Does this really run on 3S? What's the kV? 7,000 kV. No, that's not 3S. You can't run that on 3S. I mean, you probably can, but the Larva X is not a good choice. Billy FPV says, I run mine on 3S all the time. 7,000 kV? For real, though? Okay. I would want to put a motor limit on it. Oh, no. This is 2.5-inch props, not 3-inch props. That's why. Okay, I understand now. Well, Larva X likes the... people in the chat seem to like the Larva X. Okay, there you go. That's your choice. The Larva X is the best 3S 450 milliamp hour under 200 Australian. Bingo. Thank you, chat, for your help. I think those motors are pretty... The 1103 motors, I don't like them. I think they should be bigger. What do I know? I guess on 2.5-inch, they may be okay. Dingboy VR, thank you for $5 Canadian. Would you recommend the Tyro 79 for a first 3-inch, or would you recommend anything else around the same price? Dingboy, the Tyro quads are super inexpensive. They are an okay project for a first build because of their low cost, but the quality of the parts is extremely bare. Like, the Tyro parts are just barely good enough that I don't reject them out of hand, but just barely. So the Tyro 79, there's lots of tutorials for how to build it. If you want to make it your first quad, it's okay way to get your feet wet, but it's really, they've made a lot of compromises to get the price down. So I'm not sure I would recommend it. But if you want to build one, you know, you're only going to be out, what, like $100. So. Anyway. We got about 5 minutes left in the stream. Normally, I would say Aaron Ciotti is going to be streaming after me, but I haven't seen him in the chat. Ciotti, where are you? So I don't know if he's going to be streaming tonight, but we're going to be finishing up in about 5 minutes. We'll see you guys tomorrow for the news, the FPV news with JB and It's Blunty. We got a lot of news because I was at Burning Man last week, and so I skipped the news, so we'll be catching up on all the newsworthy things that happened in FPV. And, can you run an Express LRS module on the TBS Mambo? Yes. Believe you can, because it has a JR module bay. So, yep, you sure can. Ciotti is going to be streaming. Okay, great. Where is he? Ciotti, where are you? Okay, well, he's going to be streaming. There he is. Hey, yo, Ciotti. Ciotti's going to start posting the link to his stream. Thank you guys so much for coming out. We'll take a couple more questions in the last 5 minutes, but I just wanted to give him a little plug there. Monday, giveaways, FPV Cycle Glide, FC Swap. Hey, Ciotti. Ciotti, you got to get SnowRunner on PC so we can play together. I did a hard mode SnowRunner stream. It took me about 3 hours to like finish one mission. It was a lot of fun, but it would have been more fun with friends. But Ciotti plays SnowRunner on PlayStation, so we can't play together because I don't have a PlayStation. Milara wants to know, when will the Evoke review come out? Next week, probably. I have not started it, so it definitely won't come out this week. Ciotti says PC can eat me for life. I mean, you could play it on Mac, I guess. Damn. Don't have a PlayStation though, man. There you go. Buy a PS4, it's the future. Yeah, but I just like streaming off my PC. I'm all set up to stream off my PC, so. Michael MC, thanks for a $5 super chat. I'm a PC guy. I'm coasting on this 1080 Ti that I bought like 3 years ago. SnowRunner is on Steam? I thought it was only on Epic. Oh my god, is it on Steam? I'm not going to rebuy it, but... Oh my god, it is! It's on Steam! Frickin' Epic. I don't like having to log into the Epic store just to play SnowRunner. Does not skipping ads on your channel help your revenue, Lord Hendricks? Yeah, it does. A little bit. Let me give you the straight dope, though, Lord Hendricks. The ad revenue from any one person is pennies. Even if you watch a lot of ads, it's a tiny, tiny amount of money. Don't get me wrong. I still appreciate when you watch ads. But, like, here's the thing. You could Patreon me for $2 a month, and I would get 20 times more money from you. Like, I don't know what the actual fraction is. But, like, even if you watch every one of my videos and all the ads that you get shown, I'm going to make, like, 10 cents off of you. 15 cents off of you. Like, I could look up the actual stats, but I'm not going to. So if you go, well, God, I'm going to join Bardwell's Patreon for $2 a month. Turn your ad blocker on. No, don't do that. Don't turn your ad blocker on because it's against the YouTube terms of service for me to encourage you to use ad blockers. Please don't demonetize me, YouTube. My point is that I get a lot more benefit from even a very small super chat or a Patreon than I do from you deciding whether you're going to watch ads or skip ads. Yeah. So. Aber the Ham bot getting over it after my stream last night. It's crazy, isn't it? It's great. It's great. Yeah. Alrighty, folks, we're going to wrap up the stream. I did have fun playing Getting Over It. I did not play Uncrashed. What's Uncrashed? I don't know. Oh, that's a drone game. You know what I think I'm going to do? You know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to make a video. I played every FPV drone simulator. This is the best. And I'm going to play them all. Maybe I'll do a collab with somebody. You know, we'll play them together. We'll try out the multiplayer. There's so many interesting simulators that have come out that I haven't tried. Maybe I'll make a video about that. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe that'll be another idea for video that I never actually make. What about YouTube Premium? Yeah, 2 more minutes, Siati. So YouTube, the way YouTube Premium works, thank you for asking. You pay a certain amount a month, whatever you pay, what is it, $12 a month. YouTube takes a cut of that. I don't remember the cut. I think it's half, but I'm not sure. So let's say YouTube takes half of that and $6 is remaining. That money is divided between the YouTube creators you watch proportional to your watch time. So if you watch, and again, that $6 of YouTube Premium, it is so much more than the ad revenue I get from you watching ads, which is minuscule. So if you're YouTube Premium, that is another great way you can support the channel and all the channels you watch. And even if you watch 100 different channels and that $6 gets split 100 ways, it's still more money than you probably were given them by watching ads. But you probably don't watch 100 different channels. It's divided up by watch time. So if you watch a 2-hour or 3-hour live stream, that person gets more money out of your YouTube Premium. YouTube Premium, I don't promote it much because a lot of people don't like to use it. But again, YouTube Premium is a great way to support. But the best way is just to give me $1 or $2 a month. And if like I have 225,000 subscribers. So obviously, if every single one of them gave me $1 a month, right? So if you are a subscriber and you're like, well, how can I help out? And you're like, well, should I watch ads? Should I buy YouTube Premium? Should I become a patron? Become a patron at the $1 or $2. There's no $1 tier anymore. There used to be. And then just never think about it again unless you're like, damn, $2, I'm getting off. You know, if you want to give me more, that's fine. But even that amount is way more than I'm getting from YouTube. So there you go. All right. Thank you for asking. Appreciate you guys caring. We're going to wrap up right now. I'm going to let Siati take over. Thank you so much for coming out. Siati, have a great stream. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the news and throughout the week. Happy flying, everybody.